Curiosity's not a sin, Harry, but you should exercise caution.
He's a Durmstrang. You're fraternizing with the enemy.
There's the Cruciatus curse.
And we'll celebrate a boy who was kind and honest and brave and true, right to the very end.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. We're doing Chapter 11, Aboard the Hogwarts Express.
That's the Hogwarts Express.
That was weird. And we have Elizabeth back with us.
Well, what sound do you think the Hogwarts Express makes?
Not whatever sound you just made. So, we're discussing Chapter 11, Aboard the Hogwarts Express. Shockingly, most of this chapter happens aboard the Hogwarts Express.
Well, first I have to get to the Hogwarts Express.
So you have to get there first.
I just like how, once again, the journey to Hogwarts, it never, ever, ever goes smoothly. Like, there's always chaos when the Weasleys...
This is relatively smooth, all things considered.
I mean, yeah, but, like, in the morning, it's like, you know, there's a head in the fire, and Arthur's being pulled away, and then it's raining like crazy, and they couldn't get wizarding cars, so they have to get muggle taxi drivers, and animals are not happy, and it's just like, it's mass chaos once again.
I feel like heads and fires can be somewhat normal in the wizarding world.
Yeah, but not, this is the first time Harry's ever seen it.
For Harry, yes.
He did a double take.
The only thing that seems to startle Molly about it is it happens particularly early in the morning.
Yeah.
But that's the only thing that seems to perturb her about it. Anyway, so yeah, you have all that chaos in the morning, and then they end up getting on to the Hogwarts Express. More vagueness about what's coming in this upcoming year. Charlie and Bill are kind of dancing around the subject.
Malfoy seems to know, though.
Yeah, they run into Malfoy on the train, and he takes particular pleasure in knowing that they don't know something.
Yeah, it's another thing to taunt them about.
So, going back to the whole business with Arthur getting called away, you have Amos Diggory popping up in the fire, calling for Arthur to get to the Ministry as fast as he can because something's happened with Mad-Eye Moody.
Which, just for a second. It's his head in the fire, which I have so many questions about, which I know you're going to accuse me of being a Ravenclaw about again. But just the logistics of if your head is traveling, but your body is left behind, is it like your neck stretches all the way to the next grate? And if that's the case, do the wizards that are also traveling by flue powder, like their entire body, could they, like, trip on your neck as they go from grate to grate? Like, I want to know how this works. Okay. Does your head detach from your body?
I know I am talking about heads in fires, but the idea of other wizards tripping over your neck is a ridiculous thought.
This is where my brain went.
No, I think it's
just fascinating. I want to know, like, who was the first wizard who tried it, why they thought that was a good thing to try, and also why is it that it said, like, why can Diggory not take 5 seconds to get out of the, like, fire? Like, obviously he's calling Arthur back really quickly, but it's like, other than just the fact that you would use the flue powder, like, it's instantaneous traveling, right, for the most part. So
I mean, that's what you're doing. You're just relaying a message, though.
He's relaying the message, but, like,
an owl is going to be too slow, even though apparently you live relatively in the same neighborhood.
Yeah, but I mean, how much time would he really kill if he got out of the fire and was like, hey, Arthur, come back with me to the Ministry. Hey, can I have a piece of toast? Cool, thanks. And then the two of them went back together. Like, why did he have to leave the rest of his body behind?
So how I'm imagining this is in Amos Diggory's house. He has the fireplace set up. He has the flue powder.
Is he at his house or is he at the Ministry?
Either one, whatever.
Okay.
I assume he has the fireplace in front of him. He has the flue powder in the fireplace, and then he literally just sticks his head in, says whatever the Weasley kitchen or whatever have you, and it just pops up like that. He's not going through, like, different dimensions or something like that. I think it just, his head, if you just stick your head in, I think that's the only thing that would show.
Well, at the same time, I'm thinking about when the first time Harry...
So therefore his head is, like, coming through the fireplace.
I just think of the first time when Harry traveled by fire and he could see the different grates of other wizarding like households, and he misspoke, so he ended up in the wrong place. So if the idea of like what their advice was literally like, be careful of the grates, don't get out too quickly, or whatever the case may be, like I'm just imagining your head literally just traveling through this void of being in fireplaces to that next fire. And just this long neck. It's probably just
It's
me.
not a long neck. I can guarantee it's not a long neck.
It's 100% just me imagining this, but it amuses me, so I'm going to continue to imagine it.
I would entertain like a different type of flue powder is a different magic associated with it, or a different type of magic in general is associated with it. I could see both of those as potential options, or literally just you put part of your body in. The whole purpose for him calling Arthur this way is so he can get to the ministry quickly, so he can try to get Mad-Eye Moody off on a relatively easy offense instead of
being arrested, because he has a new job to start.
Yeah, so Arthur's trying to take notes very quickly so he could properly do this. He's talking about all these different ministry things that he can possibly do. Oh, I can get him off on this. It's fine. I just got to get there quick.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, Diggory said Mad-Eye Moody claims he heard an intruder creeping towards the house, and that intruder was attacked by his dustbins, which in the United States we would just call your garbage cans. And the neighbors heard the racket, and so they called the police officers.
Policemen.
Yep, and they arrived, and they were also attacked by those, dustbins, and just total chaos. And, I mean, Diggory does not believe that there was an intruder. He thinks it was just like a cat covered in, potato skins or something like that, and that
No, there's an extremely upset cat covered in potato peels.
Yeah, so the cat got, the cat was the intruder. And just that Moody is being paranoid because he has a reputation for being paranoid. But it's just really unfortunate that this is happening now because he has a brand new job that he clearly needs to get to if they're getting Arthur to try to get him off, of this crime.
Yeah, so obviously Mad-Eye has a history. We find out later from some Bill and Charlie who interject in this whole thing because
they explain who Mad-Eye Moody is.
Right, they themselves have only heard of him because I think Ron questions who is this nutcase?
Yeah, something like that.
Because
what kind of nickname is Mad-Eye?
But one of them, I can't remember who exactly, but they say that he's a retired Auror who has a very decorated history, and half the cells at Azkaban are full of criminals that he's put there,
right,
which would make enemies of their friends and family.
Right, and
so
Harry is finally told, that's what an Auror is. It's a dark wizard catcher.
Yeah, so it's understandable as to why he would be paranoid, because he's made a lot of enemies in the line of work that he's in. So... But it's Bill. I think Bill says that Moody was a great wizard in his time.
Yeah.
So, obviously, if he's setting dustbins on people, maybe he's slipping a little bit. So Arthur needs to go find it out.
I did like the comment that, I forget which one it was, but I think Molly said how, your father really, really respects Mad-Eye Moody. And it was one of the twins was like, yeah, but birds of a feather, Dad's got a few screws loose too.
After all of that chaos in the morning, we finally get on our way to the Hogwarts Express.
Yeah, and can we just take a second to give our condolences to those poor taxi drivers? Because they went through so much in Harry's cab. Fireworks went off. Could you imagine being a cab driver and having fireworks go off in your car? How did they not crash and die?
We're here in America. You picked the right 4th of July weekend, and people are a little intoxicated. Maybe an Uber goes poorly. You never know.
Gosh, could you just imagine? You would go off the road. You would hit another car. I mean, let alone with all the animals. I mean, Pig is going insane, and Crookshanks is well,
just seeing an owl in a cage being brought in.
Yeah, and Hyper Owl at that. But then the fireworks, too. Oh my gosh. I would retire from being a taxi driver that day after that group of kids.
It's a lot of people to pile in, like, just a couple of taxis or whatever they call them. But yeah, so we get to platform 9 3/4, and Bill and Charlie are suddenly being very vague about what might be happening at Hogwarts this year.
Yeah,
Charlie says, I might be seeing you sooner than you think.
Yeah. And wasn't it Bill that was like, oh, I kind of wish I was still at Hogwarts this year?
Mm-hmm. Which I think you had a note about there being vague about the events this year, but it's still better than how Percy's going about it.
Yeah, they're not nearly as smug. Percy's like, don't you want to ask me the secret information about what's happening? And they're like, no.
To you as a reader, I understand that. To the characters, Ron and Harry, and the twins, they're like, no, that's still as irritating. Because they're being like just as vague.
I feel like Percy's worse, though. Because with Percy, it's like, he's trying to show off the information, so they're just like, freaking whatever, Percy. But... So
you're reading it with an air of respect towards Bill and Charlie, but that same phrase could be like, oh, I wish I was still a student at Hogwarts. Like, it could be coming off of a smug way, too. You could say that sentence smugly.
Sure, but I don't hear them saying it smugly.
Well, they might want to just needle Ron a little bit. They're not.
No, I don't think they're being smug. I think Percy's smugness is the fact that he knows and he's been involved with it, which, I mean, we're going to get into spoilers, so I won't say too much more, but...
You don't think there's any brotherly needling going on there at all? None whatsoever?
Not the way Percy was.
Maybe not the way Percy was, but
I think for them it's more
they're needling a little bit.
I think it's more of a, like, it's a wistfulness of, it sounds like Hogwarts would be really, really fun this year. I wish I was a student still. It'd be really fun to see. That's how I'm taking it.
Okay. So anyway, they get onto the actual train, and it pulls away from them as the twins are yelling, trying to get more information.
I will say I enjoyed very, very much so how they spent so much time talking sports, and Hermione was finally just like, I'm over it, and just started reading her textbook. That is 10,000% me. So much so.
First of all, before we get into this whole train sequence, I need to specifically take time out and mention that we get a Hogwarts, a history mention, as per Hogwarts, a podcast law. We need to mention every time that Hogwarts, a history is mentioned, because that's what we got our namesake from. So,
right.
Hogwarts, a history is mentioned. Life is good.
And we learned interesting information about Hogwarts from the Hogwarts, a history source, Hermione Granger.
We do. We get that. So they end up talking about schools, which we have a little side segment that we want to talk about here in a second.
Right.
But yeah, they learn, or Ron learned specifically. I don't think Harry cares, but Ron learned. Well,
I don't think Harry cares. I think Ron doesn't care as much.
I don't think either of them care, quite honestly.
Touche.
But Hermione lets this information go anyway. At least Ron is paying attention and responds back.
Yeah, she says, Hogwarts is hidden from muggles. They see an old ruin that says, danger, do not enter, unsafe. So I have questions of how does that actually work for teenage muggles? Because I feel like a teenager who sees that would be like, I am definitely breaking into that ruin to see what's going on. So I wonder if there's more magic too as they get closer. But she talked about how like places can be unplottable, which Harry was like, what's that mean? Like you can make it so that it doesn't show up on a map, which I also have questions of how the heck did they discover that spell? But speaking of wizarding schools...
Out of need is how that's...
Out of need. Hide me from people.
She mentioned other terms like you get close to the area and suddenly feel like you have something else you got to do, or like there's certain charms that are placed on it for muggles, similar to how the Quidditch World Cup was established.
But yeah, speaking of all those other schools with different protections on them, you had sent a picture of the wizarding schools around the world, which I posted on Twitter because it was really interesting into how few schools there seems to be.
I'll just say this is an example. Some of it we know for a fact in certain countries. Like, we know Hogwarts is essentially set up for the United Kingdom and Ireland, it seems like. We know that Ilvermorny, however you pronounce that, school is in at least the United States.
Right.
And then what we think of the reason they get on it is because of Durmstrang and Beauxbatons is mentioned in this chapter.
Right. Malfoy says how he almost went to
Durmstrang. And so that kind of brings up the question of other wizarding schools, which Hermione then gets into because she read a book, stunningly. So
probably because they were talking about sports.
Yeah. So we get into this. We get into this question of other wizarding schools, and we posted the picture to Twitter, like Elizabeth said. And one of our followers, Jenny Conway, at Jenny Conway, had some really good questions about it. She said seemed like it was a bit light on the school front, and you think there'd be more wizards around. And also, some of those schools have got to be bigger in the amount of students that they have, right?
Yeah, it makes me wonder, like, just how many wizards are there? Because it seems like there's a high enough percentage of wizards around the world, but based on that map, I mean...
Just population alone, you're looking at, with this specifically, almost 2/3 of Africa, they have under one school.
Yeah, that doesn't make
The population
sense.
there must be insane.
Right.
And there must be more wizards per cap, you'd think.
You'd have to have, like, a wizard, like, Wakanda or something, like... just like completely hidden from everybody, I suppose. Maybe it is unplottable.
And in the same graphic, you have all of Central America and all of South America under one school. And just from what we've seen from the Fantastic Beasts movies, Brazil is flaunted as this beautiful, magical country.
World, yeah. Yeah.
So I will agree with Jenny. This seems a little light. It seems a little generic, because there's got to be more, like she said. There has to be more schools, and there has to be more.
Maybe they're the
wizards.
more pristine schools or prestigious.
I mean, if you look,
think of it as like the Harvard or the Yale almost of Wizarding World schools.
I mean, if you think like if there's how many people in the United Kingdom and Ireland, and then all of those get funneled into just Hogwarts, and you're talking about like roughly however many we said, like
80 to 100, something like that.
Something like that. That's an insanely low population.
Yeah.
So for all of South America and Central America, you're millions upon millions. It gets funneled down to just one school. It's got to be at least it's got to be a bigger school, right? At the very least. But anyway, thank you, Jenny, for the comments on Twitter. We really appreciate it. Kind of interacting with us. But yeah, I had the similar questions about that graphic.
Yeah, it's just interesting that, there's so many different ways to be secretive about locations, and the idea that, they never consider, like, oh yeah, Muggles can't find Hogwarts. Like, that's the thing.
I disagree with Hermione's note on where Durmstrang might be just based on their school uniforms. By the way, I love that she even looked up their school uniform
She
options.
does her research, that girl.
Wow. But she assumes it's in the deep north.
Because of fur on the uniforms.
Right. Doesn't have to be. Could be mountainous. Could be in a mountain range. And it could just be high up in a mountain range, which is how they hide it, because who's going to be traversing mountains to get there,
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's an interesting kind of discussion. On that map particularly that we were discussing on Twitter, they have Durmstrang covering almost all of mainland Europe, which I think people might get distracted and think that it's only a certain 2 or 3 countries, or even just one country, that Durmstrang's attached to. But in reality, it's like all of mainland Europe, and then the other
school?
The other school is just a couple of countries as well. So I think you get tied into thinking only one country per school, and that's not technically true. Even with Hogwarts, if you're tying in Ireland,
you're right.
That's technically 2 countries, and if you want to break up the United Kingdom into its separate countries...
Which then again just makes me wonder, like, how big is the Wizarding World population? Is it so small that that's why everybody is able to have knowledge of like who Mundungus Fletcher is, or does his reputation just precede him?
So are you
or
talking about
something?
the
Like,
entire wizarding population only being like a couple million?
Yeah, I
For
really,
the whole world?
I'm really curious about that because it does seem like it's bigger than that, but at the same time they've been hidden from Muggles so well. But then, are they actually, or are Muggles just pretending like they don't know about the existence? Because we know there are Muggles who do know about wizards. They just, push it to the side, or they're married to a witch or a wizard, or whatever the case may be. I wonder how many Muggles there are who are just like aware of the wizarding world, but just don't bring it up in conversation because you would look crazy.
I don't know. But let us know what you think on kind of all of that, and go check out our Twitter if you want to see that picture, and I could probably post it on our Instagram too. But yeah. So, anything else on the non-spoilers?
I just, once again, love Malfoy going out of his way to find Potter and to taunt him. It is no wonder why the shipping of those two is so strong on the internet. That's all I'll say about that.
Wow, you went a shipping route. That's how we're going to end non-spoilers. There you go.
Yep.
My favorite is still the Trelawney Snape ship. Or
Didn't we have one with the cats?
Crookshanks and Mrs. Norris, yes. That was also a solid one. Well, that took a left turn in the conversation, but there you have it. And we will be right back with the spoiler section.
Kill the stag!
All right, we are back with the spoiler section of Chapter 11 aboard the Hogwarts Express. And I want to kind of go back to the Draco-Harry antagonization that happens.
The shipping?
Sure. In that kind of conversation, he subtly brags to Crabbe and Goyle that he almost went to Durmstrang.
Right.
And that his father knows the headmaster there.
Right.
And that's all he gets to. But this is the spoiler section. Mm-hmm. How do those two happen to know each other?
It's almost as if they were in a cult together or something.
They were in a certain club, and that club just so happened to follow
a very, very dangerous man.
Yeah, they were both Death Eaters.
Yeah,
which begs the question: if Igor Karkaroff, is the headmaster of Durmstrang, so how? And we can talk more about this later, I suppose, when we actually meet the man. But how does one? And I know Draco starts telling us a little bit about Durmstrang.
He says how like they actually practice dark arts instead of just the like protection from it,
which is an interesting thought that I also want to get to. Mm-hmm. But so yeah, he illustrates some of the finer points of Durmstrang education, mm-hmm. and it begs the question: how does Igor Karkaroff go from Death Eater to headmaster of a school, of a fairly large, important school?
I don't know, but my question is also, how did Malfoy know Karkaroff was one of the people? Because didn't they say that most of the Death Eaters kept themselves covered at all times? They didn't fully know each other's identities as a protection way if one of them got caught.
Well, Lucius was a high-ranking member.
Right.
At that time, Lucius was top.
But wasn't he? I mean, he was more young. He wouldn't necessarily be like top Death Eater, right? I mean, he's up there, but he's not like top.
I don't know, because I think his money and influence, even at a younger age, probably goes a long way.
Probably. I just like you said before, like, Voldemort doesn't put all his eggs in one basket.
Well, sure, yeah.
That seems like one of those places where it's like, I mean, who is it? When Harry sees later in the pensieve of the different cases that were down in the dungeons and seeing like Karkaroff's trial and seeing Bagman's trial and Barty Crouch Jr.'s trial, and how I think it was Karkaroff's trial where he's like, well, you got to understand, like, we didn't know everybody's identities. He tried to keep it secret from us so that we couldn't reveal everybody's secret or names. Like, I wonder if that was just him like saying nonsense to just cover his own tracks for the court, or
Karkaroff?
if that is really the case of
at that point,
Voldemort
I think
just being like, okay, we're keeping our identity secret because I alone will know who everybody is, but you will not.
I mean, again, we can talk about it when the trials get there, but I think Karkaroff at that point is in a self-preservation mode, and I think he wants to give whatever he can give.
So it makes me wonder, like, does he know many people? Because he
I think
mentioned
Lucius.
names,
I think
but...
Lucius knows many people just based on the nature of how Lucius operates.
Okay, so then maybe Lucius is able to know Karkaroff because Karkaroff is like, want to give me a donation for my school? Which goes back to your question of how did he become headmaster of his school? And to that, I don't know. I wonder if that's just something we can deep dive.
Again, you just mentioned he was on trial for this.
Right.
So I can't imagine, like...
Well, Bagman was on trial, too, but he got off.
Yeah, two different things, though.
Yeah.
Like
two very, very different things.
That's what I'm saying. So one is, like, a capital crime, an offense. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't foresee Durmstrang... Well, I don't foresee a school being like, yeah, that guy that was on trial for... And the only reason he got off is because he gave information. By giving the information, I'm sure he had a commuted sentence or what have you. But anyway, just the fact that he's the headmaster of that school, then, given what Draco said about the school, makes you think that Durmstrang is a certain kind of place. Which, again, goes back to internationally, their headmaster is a former Death Eater. The Bulgarian Minister of Magic seemed to be familiar with one Voldy. So it makes you think that Voldemort's reach actually did cross over international borders.
Oh, yeah.
And was a threat in a lot of different places.
Well, it'd be the same way if, like, you know, there's a dictator rising up in the world. Countries are going to pay attention.
Sure.
That influence, I mean, as we've seen with many politicians today, of what happens in one country then starts to inspire it in another country, and then that leads to some dangerous things.
It just caught me off guard because reading these books, it never ever alludes to that.
But the rest of the world cares?
It always is so focused and UK-centric that you never really think about the broader perspective of things.
Well, that's why I was wondering with last chapter, with seeing the dark mark of how other countries probably responded to that news as everyone went home. And they were like, we saw the Death Eater's mark. Like, does every country know what that means? And for the ones that do, like, how much chaos did they then have back in their own ministries?
Oh, well, I'm sure the picture in the Daily Prophet got around.
I wonder if they did like a, you know how like the United States has like, we don't recommend people travel to this country at this point in time right now. I wonder if that became like, everyone's like, don't go there.
Well, how do borders work magically? Do you have like customs and like entering? And I'm sure they do.
I feel like this is something that you need to deep dive. It's a very, very you topic.
Maybe. But yeah, obviously, so there's a lot to dive in there with the whole Durmstrang bit of it. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's a lot more to discuss about Igor Karkaroff and Durmstrang and the whole bit as we get further on into the books. Right. So we'll get there as we do.
Now, you wanted to talk about Triwizard Tournament.
I just wanted to pose some fun what-ifs.
Well, my comments with that, like, we know Charlie is involved with the tournament with his work with the dragons, you know, for the first task. So that's how he knows about it. I'm really curious why Bill knows about it. Like, I don't think the Daily Prophet hasn't said anything about it, you know, because otherwise it'd be big news. And the idea that maybe Hogwarts sent home letters to parents being like, this is going to happen at school this year. Like, I could see that happening. And obviously that might be partially why, I mean, Malfoy knows because his father is so well connected, but it could easily be parents were informed and they told their kids. But it does seem like a lot of kids are surprised by the information. But regardless, it doesn't explain why Bill would know. He's not a parent.
I got two reasons.
He's a Weasley?
Well, one, I mean, his brother's involved. Mm-hmm. His father works at the ministry. His other brother works at the ministry. Mm-hmm. And
Percy's involved. Percy gets involved.
They're adults, and they're all competent, responsible adults.
Right.
Just conversation.
Right.
Do you really think Charlie, Arthur, and Percy wouldn't feel comfortable talking about it around Bill? Like,
No, I mean, that makes sense. I'm just like, I
There's
wonder
that.
if any way if Gringotts is involved.
I'm sure.
in
I'm sure
that
there's
ways. I'm sure there's expenses of
expenses, funds.
setting it up.
I'm sure there's a bunch of financial stuff that has to go off for that and the Quidditch World Cup. Mm-hmm. I'm sure he's clued in on a bunch of different levels. That doesn't surprise me as much.
So you had some questions about
No, I just, it's
Some
going to be fun what ifs of... We obviously know who our Triwizard combatants are. Mm-hmm. They are Crumb, Fleur, Cedric, and Harry.
Potter.
So you got 4 of them. Obviously, you have to be under the age requirement, right? Outside of Harry, who gets to skirt around it, which we'll get to. But my question is, what if those weren't your 4? If you had to pick other combatants from Hogwarts, because we know more Hogwarts students.
Well, I definitely tried to get Angelina, right? For Gryffindor to be...
The twins try. So
but Angelina she was of age, right? She was one who actually did apply to get in, and they were like, "Whoa, yeah, let's get a Gryffindor. That'd be cool."
So the twins try. Angelina tries. Of the students that you know,
twins fail.
How do you think the twins would do if they actually succeeded? If one of them succeeded, because they most likely both wouldn't get in.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be hard if both got in, because how do you separate the 2 of them? Like, they would want to do the tasks together.
You think Ron gets jealous of Harry? What happens if Fred gets in and George doesn't? Or George gets in and Fred doesn't?
Oh, you know what they would do?
They'd switch in and out.
Oh, 100%.
And that's fine and good, except...
I know, like,
the reason they don't get in
well enough to be like, okay, that's not
the reason they don't get in is because the cup is smarter than them.
Right.
I don't think
Dumbledore is smarter than them.
I don't think Dumbledore, McGonagall, people that have known them for so long, I don't think they get fooled as easily. You know what I mean? I just don't think they get...
No, they wouldn't, like, I don't think Dumbledore or McGonagall especially would not get fooled. But they would definitely try it.
No, they would certainly try it. Because one would feel bad that the other one's not able to participate.
I don't know how the twins would do. I'm more interested if Angelina was the one who got picked and Harry's name also then came out of the fire. What does that do to Gryffindor? You know? Splits
Gryffindor?
Yeah, I feel like it'd be like a whole civil war in there of who do you support.
Could. I mean, it splits... all of Hogwarts when Cedric and Harry both get picked.
Yeah.
And then some alliances happen, and maybe that's why Julie and Anna think he's a touch overrated. But
Are
I don't know.
Calling them out for having a Gryffindor bias?
I've called them out many a time for having a Gryffindor bias. But I don't know. There's a lot there. That obviously causes a rift in the school. Mm-hmm. If Angelina gets picked and Harry gets picked, that probably causes quite a rift in Gryffindor.
Yeah.
And it probably breaks the same way. A lot of people going for Angelina instead of Harry.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I don't know how anyone else would.
Because one's more fair and the other's not.
Yeah, I don't know how other students would fare with this. I mean, obviously Harry has experience with these weird puzzle type things.
He's 14.
Yeah, but think of what he's done up to this point. I mean, he could be more experienced than Cedric, you could argue. You could easily argue that, but I don't know, but I think for some of them, if they tried to be like Angelina could probably perform well under pressure just because she's a Quidditch star. I don't know if I guess Cho is also a Quidditch star too, so she could do well, but if there's some other student who has never been in Quidditch and hasn't had all eyes on them and the pressure of the whole school watching what they're doing, that could break somebody.
Let me throw this then at you. And instead of how they are now in this book, year 4, let's think about how they would be at their eligible age. Like, Harry has gone through book 5. He's gone through book 6. He's a more mature individual who's taught Defense Against the Dark Arts classes. The participants in those Defense Against the Dark Arts classes, Ginny, going through what she's gone through, matured, gotten quite powerful in her own right by the time she's 17. How do you think those students would fare if they were their age eligible selves?
Well, I think the DA would do well just because Harry taught them.
I think some would do better than others.
Oh, well, yeah.
Ginny, I think, would do quite well in this.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I don't know why, but she just strikes me as someone who's really good at swimming for the second task. I don't know why.
She's an athletic individual.
Yeah, I could see her very, very quickly finding her,
So wait, we've mentioned a lot of names so far, and one name that you haven't brought up is Cormac McLagan. You don't think Cormac McLagan would be a solid participant?
Would be spending too much time bragging about how he's a champion to actually do the task that he's a champion for. That's my take. That's my hot take, if you will. Moving off the what ifs for a second, though. My biggest thing, which we have touched upon before, but I want to bring it up again since this is the chapter where it happens. This is where Moody got kidnapped by Barty Crouch Jr. and Wormtail. This is what we were talking about when we read the very, very first chapter of this book, when Voldemort was talking about, putting the plan into motion. And I know we disagreed. If you missed that episode, go back and listen to it, because it's always fun when we disagree. But we were talking about how, you thought that Voldemort would not just trust these two to complete his full plan. I said how it's more, he doesn't have any other choice. He's got to go with those two. But regardless, I think this is where, Moody, when he heard an intruder, he did hear an intruder. It wasn't a cat. It wasn't like some random muggle. This was Barty Crouch Jr. and Wormtail coming to get him, and they succeeded. They got him in his trunk and then closed it and got everything ready to go just in time for Arthur to show up, and cooked up their story and, went along his merry way to Hogwarts to teach Harry and to lure him to his doom. Dun dun dun.
Yeah, I think my only question about all of that was the Voldemort side of things, of leaving some things up to chance. And I get that he's in a vulnerable position and he doesn't really have much personal control over the situation. And he does have to put some trust in some other individuals. It just feels odd that Voldy would allow so much things kind of on a coin flip's chance. Like, we get the Bill dropping some knowledge on how formidable Moody was in his prime. Mm-hmm. I'd have to think Voldy's fully aware of how capable Moody is.
Right.
So I think he'd have to find like a more foolproof way of being like, how can we ensure this is happening? How can we ensure that we have this plan done? You know what I mean?
And I think they just probably got him so off guard, since this was literally the day that he's supposed to be starting his job at Hogwarts. So if he's getting...
Wasn't Moody one of the ones that put Barty Crouch Jr. in prison to begin with?
I think so.
I think he was the guy that did it.
Yeah,
I'm not...
probably.
So I'm sure Barty Crouch is
Moody
fully aware.
Yeah, Barty Crouch. But yeah, if Moody is... from his perspective, he's packing up his stuff. He's getting ready to go teach for a full year at Hogwarts. And, the train leaves soon. Kids will be here tomorrow morning. I
love how all these plans are in place right as the Hogwarts Express is about to leave.
Funny how that works. It's almost like it's a very convenient plot device.
Voldy, as unpredictable as he should be, is awfully predictable in a lot of different ways. No. My plan must start on July 30th.
Harry has to learn. And with that, we can appreciate Voldemort. He at least cares about his education.
Voldy, pro-education. Without these plots, though, what kind of books would we have?
Exactly. So, I don't know. I love when, you read this and you're like, oh yeah, this is happening now. This is when Mad Eye goes from being Mad Eye to Barty Crouch Jr. in Mad Eye form.
Bum, bum, bum. Yeah, so do you have anything else for the spoiler section?
That is it. I'm excited to be back at Hogwarts finally. Can you believe it's been 10 chapters of just like I know there was a Quidditch World Cup and there's all these exciting things now, but it's been so long since we've been at Hogwarts. It's almost like the Sorcerer's Stone, Philosopher's Stone book all over again. Just can we get there, please?
It's been a lot of setup. We spent a lot of time at the Dursleys. The Quidditch World Cup, cool little side plot tangent
Dark Mark,
thing, which was great.
interesting, of course. And I still love the first chapter.
First chapter, I think, is phenomenal.
Yes. But let's go back to Hogwarts.
We're ready. And there's some interesting things coming up. So with that, then, I think we'll end it here, and we will get to chapter 12 next week. So
come back for that. We'll be at Hogwarts.
For Elizabeth, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram. Don't be afraid to kind of reach out.
See you soon.
Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hogwarts a Pod.